The story begins with a fatigued-looking American young lady named Natalie. She had run away from East Africa, and now, she will have to stop to get a connecting flight to Heathrow. Natalie is a brilliant biochemist. Her research in Africa has helped boost plant use in the community, and it is attracting significant investments. She has spent almost 3 years perfecting the strain at a lab in Rutgers University, and it is now ready to be tested on a large scale. She meets this young Irish man by the name of Cillian who is heading to Heathrow as well. Cillian is a translator and freelancer. They stand by the road hoping to get a vehicle to no avail. Cillian suddenly comes up with an idea, and in no time, he leads her to the train station where they will get on a train, and from there to Heathrow. On the ride, they get talking, and Cillian shares that he's going to see his sick father who has been estranged from him for years. He's not even willing to reconcile just yet, but he wonders why he's even discussing such personal detail with a random stranger. Natalie smiles and assures him that after today, he won't see her again, so it is okay to unburden himself. She flashes back to when she was still in the community in East Africa. During an event one day, a strange man by the name of Andrew walks up to her and starts a conversation. He speaks about her and her research as though he has a film about her and the laborers on the plantation where she works. Another man, named Mr. Gregor, starts creating a scene that draws the attention of everyone present. Andrew excuses himself and takes Gregor out, even as he continues threatening that everything they've worked for will burn. A few days after the event, she's working on the plantation and doing her routine check on the crops when she spots one of the locals named Wilson heading out. She offers to go with him since he's going to get more hands, but he refuses and insists that the location is not a nice place. Natalie hesitates and decides to follow him. When she gets into the local town, she observes the environment and watches the locals do their thing when she suddenly sees the strange guy again. She approaches him and questions what he's doing in the community, because it almost feels like he's stalking her. He confesses that he's a reporter, and he's writing about this thread of Iranian-sponsored Islam in East Africa. He also reveals that the reason why he seems interested in the plantation workers is because a couple of her flower pickers are undocumented Somali immigrants. He shows her a handful of people standing some distance away from them, and informs her that the people want to make sure that they are handled on any radicals planning to strike. Back to the present, the train is about to stop, and Cillian informs Natalie that hers is the next stop, and he needs to get off now. Natalia seems to enjoy their conversation so far, and she sort of wants it to linger on a little more. So she invites this Irish stranger to London. She requests that he spend 24 hours with her in London. She has had a messed up year, and she has learned that one has to do things when one feels right. Cillian admits that he'd love to, but he needs to leave now. He turns around and hurries out of the train. Natalie bows her head and closes her eyes. They meet again at the airport, this time at the baggage area. Cillian greets her and informs her that his bags are going to Dublin. Sometime back before the incident that led to her running away, Natalie meets up with Andrew. He thinks of a way in which he will be able to see her again, and comes up with an idea, which is why he asks her to come meet him at a roadside restaurant. He apologizes for Gregor's behavior the other day, and Natalie chuckles because Gregor is the one who is supposed to apologize and not him. They go on a walk and she asks about his relationship with Gregor. He doesn't even know what answer will be best for her. Gregor is a cautionary tale and/or a wise old friend who has been around in the town forever, and he used to work with Kate, Gregor's wife, back in the day. Natalie is getting comfortable around him as they continue talking, and she teases him about being a spy who sells his reports to the Western government. Suddenly, the sound of gunshots and a crash sends everyone running in different directions. Instead of running away like the others, Natalie keeps running in the direction of the gunshots. Andrew holds her back from approaching the fallen bodies on the floor. She cries bitterly seeing mothers carrying the bodies of their sons lying on the floor lifeless, and the sight of blood on the floor just aggravates her. She wants to help, no matter how little she can, but he insists it is safer for them to flee. He takes them to his apartment where it is safe, and Natalie begins to blame him for not intervening. She knows what she's capable of, and believes she could have helped those people. Andrew informs her that Al-Shabaab will claim responsibility as they are trying to intimidate the African Union troops into withdrawing from Somalia. Natalia wouldn't have any of what he's saying. She questions his humanity, seeing that he's talking about the political stand of things, which is not as relevant as the lives of innocent people. He wants her to understand that the first bomb might have been a decoy. After all, that's how Al-Shabaab works. They set off a bomb which will naturally draw people to the scene, and then they will set the real one off, and it will claim more lives than she can imagine. It makes sense to her, but it breaks her heart that there is nothing she could have done to help. Andrew offers her some tea, which she refuses to accept. He stands close to her, and the emotional tension between them suddenly heightens. Natalie knows that she shouldn't be at his place, but she can't tame how she's feeling at the moment. He kisses her gently, and she responds, matching his energy bit by bit. He continues to ravish her mouth and slowly leads her to his bedroom where the deed will be done. Natalie and Andrew's relationship becomes quite a thing as the both of them spend more time together. One day she's doing some planting in his garden, and she talks about the time to come when she will be away, and he will have to be with a woman his mother wants. He can sense the tone of jealousy in her voice, and he also wishes September will never come, so she doesn't have to leave. At present, Cillian and Natalie are walking down the street and conversing about Cillian's line of job. She finds it pretty interesting that his specialties include ancient and modern Greek as well as Latin. He suggests they share their names and probably backstory, but on second thought, Natalie thinks it will be better if they do, without sharing their names and stories. They walk to the front of one of London's magnificent structures. An old couple who are there for their honeymoon pleads with Natalie to take a picture of them. She happily obliges, and they converse while she goes on to give them a shot. Natalie lies, saying that they are also married, and they are there for their first honeymoon. She requests that they take a photo of her and Cillian as well. Cillian is surprised. He has no idea that she is married, not until the old lady compliments the ring on her finger. They walk into the museum, and they express their opinions about the sculpture which decorates the museum. It is almost difficult to believe that they are not the original version. However, Natalie thinks they are beautiful, even though they lack the aura of the original, just as Cillian said. Cillian confesses that she looks quite young to be married. He questions if she's divorced or something, but she refuses to answer him as she reminds him that they have agreed not to share their life stories. Natalie is lost in the beauty of a sculpture of Mercury, a Roman god. It is Cillian's area of specialty, so he gives her more information of the entity the sculpture represents. Natalie walks a bit further to feed her eyes on the other sculptures worthy of admiration. The next scene shows Natalie back in Africa. She walks into Andrew's bathroom and finds him soaking himself in the bathtub and just chilling there. She scares him and joins him fully clothed. She requests that he take her to see his city, London. She wants to be introduced to his family and friends if possible. Andrew reminds her that the only opportunity they have is after the harvest, just before she leaves, but she doesn't want to hear anything about her leaving Africa. To the present, Natalie and Cillian get in a cab. She gives the driver an address, and in a few minutes, he drives them to a massive hotel building. Natalie books one of the most expensive suites for a night, and Cillian isn't comfortable with it. He has no plans to waste a huge amount of money just for one night on their first day of meeting. She assures him that he has nothing to worry about as the bills are on her dad's debit card. They both run down the hallway, and she hands the keys to him, asking him to take her over to the threshold. He carries her with her arms spread out in the air as he walks into the room. Natalie has flashes of some sweet up-close moments she had with Andrew back in Africa. Just as they are about to kiss, she pulls away from him. Cillian enters the washroom to clean up while she stays in the room and looks through the window. She recalls one time when she had asked Andrew how long it would take him to find someone else if she passed. He teases her and throws her question back at her. Natalie confesses she'd end her life if it happened. Cillian comes back into the room, and in a sober tone, she admits that she's not ready to get laid with him. Initially, she thought she was ready for that, but she can't bring herself to do it. She needs more time. She gives him another shirt to wear as the one he's holding is wet. He puts it on, and she can't help but confess how much she likes the shirt on him. They soon set out to watch the sunset by the river. They play like lovebirds up to the bridge where they will have a perfect view. The scenery is so beautiful, and Natalie gushes over the sight before her. She pulls out the second ring on her neck chain and wears it on Cillian's finger. He's stunned, but he doesn't want to ruin the moment, so he pulls her close for a kiss. A flashback displays her marriage ceremony with Andrew, and how the locals greatly rejoice with them as they sing and dance behind the newlyweds. Natalie and Cillian pull away from each other. He sees the sad look on her face, and he's prompted to ask what happened to her husband. After their marriage, Andrew becomes sick, and he's bedridden for some time. When he wakes up, Natalie inquires what Hungerford Bridge is, because he kept talking about it when he was unconscious. He even said in his unconsciousness that he couldn't go back, and if he moved forward, he would never see her again. Andrew looks at her with sad eyes and proposes they spend their honeymoon in London. Cillian and Natalie take a walk to the cemetery. It is quite uncomfortable for her as she holds onto his arms tightly while walking through the graveyards, which have people moving all about on a tour. Cillian senses her discomfort and suggests they go back, but she refuses, not when she's almost there. They keep walking, and Cillian's curiosity wouldn't stop pricking him as Natalie hasn't told him what happened with her husband. He finally asks, and her answer leaves him in shock. How could she end her husband's life and still say it so casually? Natalie walks away but can hardly maintain her composure as she bursts into tears and almost faints. Thankfully, Cillian is within reach. He grabs her and takes her to a seat by a corner. He tries to get her to talk, but she refuses as she sobs and takes in short breaths. She requests to be taken back to the hotel. When they get back to the suite, he lays her to rest on the bed while he sits by the couch watching over her. Natalie breaks the silence, asking if he can live with her. He gets up from his seat and climbs the bed to meet her. At her request, he cuddles her and she begins to reminisce about her time with Andrew. She remembers this period when they visited the local market together. Cillian notices that she is asleep. He gently gets off the bed and moves to search her bag. He seems quite interested in knowing more about this lady who looks like she's hiding a lot of pent-up emotions. He opens her diary and scrolls through the pages, and then her camera, which once belonged to Andrew. Cillian finds out quite some things that he can't handle, and he needs to excuse himself to go take some fresh air and clear his head. Back then, Natalie and Andrew visit Gregory and his wife Kate during dinner time, and Kate breaks the news of their travel to Tel Aviv. Natalie doesn't seem to like the idea of her husband going away. She asks so many questions about the place and what they will be doing with Gregory and Kate. The next day after dinner, she sees her husband and Kate off to the airport. Andrew kisses her and promises to return in a few days. By the time Cillian returns, he finds Natalie sobbing on the floor, and the whole room is messed up. He joins her at the spot where she's sitting, and she questions why he came back when he can be with someone better. Guess love has its ways of changing the course of a man's desire. He confesses that she's the most interesting person he has ever met, and she's a mystery. Later that evening, they step out, and just beside where they are sitting, some circus girls are conversing. They start talking, and Cillian focuses his attention on the ring on his finger. He sure has a lot on his mind but doesn't know how or when to ask his questions. They soon move to a nearby bar and order some drinks. Natalie observes that the bartender named Charlie keeps looking at her flirtily, even while he's serving their drinks. He maintains his distance until Cillian gets taken away by a random girl. Charlie comes back and gives Natalie one more shot also, inviting her to his party happening a few blocks away. Later, she drags Cillian with her to the venue, as described by Charlie. Well, the place is filled with lots of people and soft music playing in the background. Natalie's attention gets drawn to the photographs pasted on the wall on one edge of the house. She walks over to take a look, and a lady comes up to her. She talks sadly about her partner who passed away after leaving her behind. After the lady leaves, she faces the pictures and looks sadly at him, until Charlie comes flirting with her again. She questions if he's mourning his best friend, or flirting. It turns out that Charlie is Andrew's best friend. She speaks to him in such a way that gets him uncomfortable, so he walks away and asks her to get off rudely. In a few minutes, he comes back to find her and Cillian talking in low tones. Natalie looks like she's going to cry, but he doesn't care. He yells and questions her audacity for telling him how to mourn his best friend who recently passed. Natalie breaks down and confesses that he'd still be alive if she hadn't ended his life. Charlie loses his cool instantly and charges towards her. Thank goodness for the intervention of the others present as they hold him back, preventing him from hurting her. Cillian takes her out while the others are holding Charlie back. He's overwhelmed as he shakily walks ahead of her. He's finally understanding everything she's doing, and it frightens him. Natalie intentionally takes him along with her to Andrew's house where his friends are all gathered, mourning his passing, and to make matters worse, the clothes she gave to him belong to Andrew. He's upset, and he wants to know what she did to Andrew. He doesn't even know if she's talking to Andrew or him when she's speaking, but Natalie doesn't think there is a difference. He yells and tells her that he's not Andrew. She thinks he's just frightened by how much he loves playing the part, and it annoys him even more. He walks away from her and stops a cab, which they both get into. On the ride, he asks her to tell him what happened. Natalie shares how it became difficult to reach Andrew after he traveled to Tel Aviv. One day, Gregory asks her out to give her a treat, and they visit a local restaurant for dinner. They get talking about their spouses, and Natalie expresses her concerns over Andrew and Kate, who spend a lot of time together reporting news. He sees her worries, and he informs her that being monogamous doesn't mean everyone doesn't have their needs or moments. He reveals to her that it is only a big deal when one is young, but the older they get, they begin to see it from a different perspective. It seems Gregory is fanning the flames of suspicion in her head, instead of putting it out. When she gets back home, Natalie calls her husband's hotel line and explains that she's his wife and she'd like to be connected to his room line. The lady over the phone obliges her. Her heart is broken when Kate receives the call, and her voice sounds drowsy over the phone. Natalie keeps quiet and brings the call to an end. She pauses on her story and attempts to kiss Cillian, but he refuses to let her. He pulls off the ring and gives it back to her, stating that he can't be who she wants him to be. Natalie is unhappy. She tells the driver to stop and asks Cillian to wear the ring and step out of the vehicle. Cillian steps out of the vehicle, leaving her inside. As the driver ignites the car and continues the ride, she flashes back to when her husband returned from Tel Aviv. His colleague Brad and she had gone to pick him up. She's unhappy and refuses to say much, even when beggars stop their vehicle to beg for something to eat. Brad feels pity for them. He and Andrew start discussing the situation, but she refuses to utter a word until her husband reveals that he wants to walk the remaining way home. The next day, while she's swimming, Andrew and Kate are having a discussion by the poolside while Gregory is just relaxing. Brad suddenly drops a TV from upstairs, causing everyone to panic. He starts acting as though something has gotten into him, and he repeats the same words Gregory repeated during the event when she had met Andrew for the first time. Natalie thinks back to the quarrel she had with Andrew, and he walks out of the house, driving off before she could even say another word. There is also this time she has to confide in Gregory, who seems to have made peace with his wife cheating on him, but she can't take it. She breaks down in tears. The cab arrives at the hotel. She gets down and walks the stairs up to her suite. With each step, she remembers how hurt she was and how she had driven to the plantation where she and Andrew used to have their love plays. She breaks down into tears and cries her eyes out in the field as she burns everything down. A few days after the incident, she asks Andrew about the sex life in Tel Aviv. He knows she's suspicious about his closeness to Kate, so he explains to her that the hotel made a mistake, and she's supposed to trust his words even if it is difficult to do that. He confesses that there's nothing between him and Kate because he loves her. Natalie comes back to reality. She enters her room and climbs up the window, looking down and seeing the distance from her room's floor to the road where cars are driving through. Cillian walks into the room and finds her in a position that looks like she's about to make a stupid decision to end her life. She questions if he has ever wished he could go back in time to undo an action or say something he needed to say. She blames herself as she shares how Andrew had lost his life. That day, she was seeing a game at the local station filled with other people. Andrew and Kate arrive at the location in her husband's vehicle, and as they approach her direction, a bomb suddenly goes off. Everyone runs wild in search of a hiding place. Natalie looks confused and overwhelmed as she watches how everyone in the vicinity scampers around in search of a covering. She also finds her way to some distance away from the scene, but Andrew isn't aware because of the dust in the air. She quietly stands aside and watches Kate try to stop him, but he runs inside the game center in a bid to rescue her, only for the second bomb to go off. Cillian understands now how she feels she's the cause of Andrew's demise. He does his best to get her down from the window successfully, as he reminds her that they need to end their honeymoon. The following morning, Natalie wakes up, and the memories from the previous night come flooding her head. She remembers how she and Cillian had engaged in some heated, intimate sessions all through the night. She turns to see him still sleeping on the bed, so she quietly wears Andrew's shirt and grabs her journal. Natalie takes the lotus flower she had placed in between the pages of her journal and drops it beside Cillian's pillow, where he's sleeping soundly, and quietly walks out of the room. She has finally enjoyed the honeymoon she never had with her husband, even though this honeymoon is filled with painful events. She grabs her bags and leaves the premises, never to return. The 24-hour period she wants to spend with Cillian is over, and now is the time to move on and run away from her painful past. She may be broken, but she sure is powerful.